Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki Frazier and Rachel Dean, certified clinical aromatherapists. We are excited to have you here on today's episode where you know that you'll get the best essential oil scoop.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. If you want to learn more about aroma massage, check out the courses at www.schoolofessentria.com. Welcome to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. Nikki Frazier here with Alexis Sams, and we're going to talk all things food allergy. Dr. Alexis Sams is a functional medicine specialist, holistic healthcare practitioner, and the founder of Renatrition Health and Wellness, located in Phoenix, Arizona. With a focus on enhancing the well-being of those dealing with chronic pain and symptoms, her signature FoodClues unique treatment approach to uncover often overlooked factors in traditional medical practices. She draws on her extensive training in physical therapy, functional medicine, mindset coaching, herbalism, and essential oils to help countless individuals worldwide who couldn't find relief through conventional methods like exercise, medication, injections, or surgery. Dr. Alexis is a self-proclaimed foodie and the author of FoodClues, Decoding the Hidden Messages Behind Your Food, Likes and Dislikes. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Nikki. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. As someone with food allergies, this is something near and dear to my heart. And my mom actually has mine are actually anaphylactic, but my mom has I always like to say mystery allergies that we tend to laugh about because if you can't laugh, then you start to cry. But where she's just pretty much allergic to everything, like literally everything. She can eat it one day, she can't the next, and then she can eat it a week later, and then she can't. So allergies are something that are very big passion of mine and very just intriguing to me as to how they work. So I'm very excited to talk to you today. But before we dive in, we always like to ask all of our guests, and since you do use essential oils, what is your favorite essential oil?
I do the worst with the what is the favorite.
Right.
I'm one of those people that goes into the there's a category. If there's I have a favorite for each category. My favorite, if I really just had to not use a category, I think I would say bergamot.
Oh, I love that.
It's just the smell is just like, if heaven has a smell, I pray that it's bergamot. Like it just smells so wonderful. I use it for my personal body scent. I put it when I make my natural deodorant. It's in my home cleaner. It's the one that I use the most for my personal stuff. So that has to be my favorite.
Yeah, no, and it's a great one. It's a good one to use. Absolutely. So I'd love to know what did your journey into becoming someone who helps people with food allergies and just as a practitioner where you're at now, how did this journey begin for you?
Yeah, the easiest way to sum it up, and then I'll, give the long story short, is it's basically my pandemic story, which, at this point, kind of everybody has a pandemic story. I grew up dancing all my life, and so my original practice focused on injury rehab and performance enhancement for dancers and performing artists. And then the pandemic came and dance and arts was not essential. But a lot of my clients also knew that I incorporated functional medicine concepts even into the performing arts realm as well. So then when the pandemic happened, a lot of those same clients, their parents, their relatives, wanted my help for immune support. They didn't want to get sick and things like that. So that was the immediate shift in my practice. So I was doing virtual consultations to put people or to offer regimens in a healing sense for the pandemic. After the pandemic, then people just naturally started saying, okay, that was great. Is there anything that you can do for my high blood pressure, or I'm on this thyroid medication? Can you help with that? And so I eventually just kind of morphed my practice more into focusing on holistic health and functional medicine. and I developed a healing framework and program for that. And that was going great. And then one day, one of my clients, towards the end of her program, she came in and, how you doing? All the things, and then she was like, you know what? I went to a cookout, a couple weekends ago or whenever she went. She was like, and I was able to eat melon. And I was like, that's great,
Great.
And she was like, no, but I used to be allergic to it. So then I was like, oh, really? She said, yeah. And I had some watermelon and it was fine. And she also used to be allergic to avocado. And she said she had guacamole and it was fine. And then she was like, I've had watermelon every day this week because I loved it, but I could never really tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was great and went on with my, my practice and my life. And then, over the months, more people just kept mentioning, by the way, I'm able to tolerate this more and that more. So then I started picking up on it as a pattern.
Nice.
And then I started actually backtracked. I looked at some older clients and went through their medical files and picked out the ones that had food allergies in their history. And I called a few up and I was just like, by chance, like, how's that going? And a number of them said, oh, I can tolerate things a little bit better, or yeah, that's gone. So then it was just kind of like, okay, this is a thing. And so I started researching and I discovered that somewhere between 15 and 20 million people just in America experience food allergies and intolerances. And yeah, that personally shocked me. You hear about it all the time and everybody knows somebody or you experience it yourself. But when I actually saw the research for that number, I took a step back. And I'm a person of faith. And so I really feel that this is unexpectedly become my purpose, because now that I let people know and now that I've been a little bit more vocal and visible, lots of people have been, seeking out this help, and they're starting to believe that solutions and resolving their symptoms are possible. So that's my story. And it was unexpected, but I absolutely love it. I love it. I have to admit, I love it more than I loved helping the dancers, because this is, people who felt like their life was limited in a lot of different ways. And we're breaking those barriers, we're releasing those limitations. And so it's been like just a mind-blowing experience. And I'm very grateful and blessed to be a part of it.
I love that story. The fact that it was almost like an oops, like side effect of what you were doing. You were helping, and it's like, oh, and as an extra bonus, check this out.
Totally.
So I love that. And quite a few thoughts came up while you were talking there, because it does have a huge effect on people. I like, for myself, my own experience, when I used to work in the corporate world, I worked in the school system for 15 years. I couldn't eat in staff lounge a lot of time, because I was anaphylactic to the smell of seafood. So even going in, if someone reheated salmon, I would start to swell. So I would have to leave. And it would just get worse and worse. So even times I would have to, even if I wanted to go out to a restaurant to eat, we had to always be there early before the rush to make sure that no one kind of was around us while we ate. Which, different little things that you have to think about when you have allergies, and always checking labels and reading. And I also have tree nut allergies, and the amount of healthcare products of like, I remember being a teenager and just wanting to find like a face cleanser, but they started to put walnut shells in stuff. And I'm like, what? Like, I would have never thought needing to look at my face cleaner for tree nut stuff, but they did. And now as a clinical practitioner, I see all the benefits of why people are using different nut oils and different things like that. But it's everywhere, and it has a lot of limiting aspects for people with allergies. So being able to decrease those reactions is really life altering. I've had treatments myself, and they went from anaphylactic to no longer anaphylactic, but I'm too scared to eat some certain foods. I keep wanting to test them out, but my husband's like, no, it's not worth the risk. And I'm like, but just a small little tuna melt. I'm like, that's all I want, of a childhood memory of the fondness of tuna melts one summer. And I just want to relive that. And he's too scared for me, and I'm too scared myself. So part of me, I'm like, maybe one day I'll try it again, because I know I'm not anaphylactic, and I want to see how far that's come. But it's, when you've lived for fear for years, almost your entire life, it's ingrained in you. But the one thing you did mention was allergies and sensitivities. So I'd love to know, can you kind of talk a bit about what is the difference between allergies and sensitivities?
Yes, I can, but my response might be a little bit surprising. Um, it's actually something that I talk about when, like as part of my introduction, when clients work with me, it's in my webinar, and it's part of one of the concepts that I call FoodClues fundamentals, which is kind of like the little tenets that describe like the FoodClues philosophy. What I have found through working with clients and through research that resonates with me and that helps my framework to work is that the differences between what people identify as allergies versus a sensitivity versus an intolerance mostly has to do with the magnitude of the underlying issue driving them.
Okay.
So the biggest difference in what most people associate with an allergy, I associate that with more organs, more systems involved in terms of what is driving that reaction. There's more going on that needs to be resolved, or there are more external causes, more a higher magnitude of infection or toxicity. There's more on that end, and I call it a spectrum.
Yeah.
My little theory is called the FAST theory, food allergy spectrum theory. So on this end of the spectrum, they have more going on and
Yeah.
more needs to be resolved versus your sensitivities, they're on the opposite end. It can be this actually kind of answers the question for people with the same food in common, but different magnitudes of reaction. So people with peanut allergy, you have people who are just kind of like a sensitivity or an intolerance or a little bit of reaction all the way towards your anaphylactics. They can't go out. They have to have the EpiPen. And
Yeah.
what I feel explains that is the magnitude of the underlying factor. There are some people, and there is a lot of communication that the differences between like an allergy versus an intolerance has to do with like an immune versus like a non-immune response, which I can appreciate that perspective, but there's also just biologically, it's not like a proven or anything like that, but just by biology, a lot of our immune-based cells are in our gut. They're within our intestinal system. So to me, kind of like when you describe like intolerances and sensitivities having to do with the intestines and not necessarily being immune related, part of me is like, well, if 80% of your immune cells are in your gut, isn't that probably still kind of like an immune issue? So for me, it boils down to differences in the immune response. So a lot of people will associate the allergy with like an IgE response. That's a common term that people in the allergy community are familiar with. And then for me, on the intolerance side, to me, I'm finding that has to do a little bit more with IgA or IgM responses, but they're still both immune.
Yeah. Okay.
So
very interesting.
That's my personal take on the differences, but not so much differences between allergies and sensitivities. And when I apply that perspective to my clients, it works and it helps. So I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so if someone has, let's say, the more severe end of the spectrum versus, so they are all not necessarily anaphylactic, but could be anaphylactic or just, swelling a lot. Like, what is it that immune system or the immune response is also what determines what makes one person have a more severe allergic response versus not? Or like what is it in the body that really creates that response? Like, why is it that I can't eat tree nuts or seafood versus, my husband who can eat anything under the sun and doesn't affect him.
Mhm. So that's another perspective, like of the Food Clues fundamentals, or just like the Food Clues philosophy. If you ask me to like sum up Food Clues in a nutshell, I always say every food you avoid is a clue to your health.
Okay.
So certain characteristics within the food is one part of the puzzle. And then that characteristic I link to an organ or body system that is supposed to be managing that characteristic. So for example, um, actually I'll use the first food clue that I ever came across as the example. First food clue that I was presented with was cilantro. It came up in my functional medicine training, and it was somewhere in one of the modules, and it talked about how some of the like inherent chemical components in cilantro, when people have an adversity to it, when they avoid it. You ever notice how people either like they love cilantro or they hate it? There's very few people
Yes.
like in the middle. And a
Yes,
lot
I've
of
heard it
times
either tastes like soap
it
to
tastes
those who
like
don't
soap.
like it. That I have a
Yeah.
few I love cilantro. So to me, I'm like, it doesn't taste like, where are you getting this soap from? But then I started to hear about like they just don't
Mhm.
process it the same way. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad that it tastes like soap to you.
Exactly. So that processing characteristic many times is tied to liver function, or in this case, a liver dysfunction, because it's the dysfunctional part that's causing the rejection sign and the taste like soap. So don't put it in my
Yeah.
mouth because I can't handle it.
Hmm.
So that was essentially like my first food clue. A characteristic in cilantro is tied to liver function / dysfunction. So
Mhm.
reverse engineering that, if you're able to use the functional medicine principles to guide the liver back to normal function, then it changes how you feel about the cilantro. So that's
Nice.
essentially, like I tell my clients, I'm like, it's not magic. I just
Mhm.
really dive deep and figure out the details of how to make all of that work for you, so
Yeah.
that you do increase your tolerance, you do increase your comfort, confidence, and security with what you're eating or even what you're around. So that's how those things come together. Now, the extra step that I add to that, so we said characteristic in cilantro, liver issue. The extra step that I go beyond that is figuring out what drives that dysfunction in the first place. Your liver didn't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to be dysfunctional, like I'm
Mhm.
going to have a problem. There's usually that root cause. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that lovely buzzword that we hear these days.
Yes.
And usually root causes, the major ones are a physical injury, surgery, infection, toxicity. Those tend to be the heavy hitters. And
Yeah.
usually there is something in one or more of those categories that has been unresolved, or it hasn't been completely resolved.
Yeah.
So it's still causing an issue. And once I figure that out, again, work and clean that up,
Yeah.
give the liver its support, cilantro gets better. And then I
Nice.
pretty much do that for any type of food, any type of reaction. Which leads me into the kind of third fundamental, the Food Clues fundamental. I call it the Food Clues funnel, which is essentially a lot of food reactions, a lot of symptoms usually boil down to the same types of dysfunctions in the body, which usually funnel down to the same types of root causes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then treatment wise starts out on a very similar foundation. And then as we move forward, we start to get like the little tidbits and personal parts that have to do with your medical history to kind of tie up the loose ends at the end.
Fascinating on many areas. And a few, there's always a few, I have like ideas and I'm always like trying to keep hold of my ideas. So I know you said a lot of times it's, the root cause of toxicity or an infection or different things like that you needing help with. What about like for babies though, or younger kids where, maybe they're only 1, 2, 3 and their allergies start to develop. I know my parents used to laugh because I had a milk allergy that I thankfully did grow out of. It wasn't like the lactose or anything like that. It was a true milk allergy. And it used to just make me sleepy where I would pass out everywhere. So they used to actually joke around being like, oh, give her a glass of milk when like they just needed some
Oh,
downtime. They didn't do it, but it was a total joke of like, okay, she's getting like, normal toddler, very hyper, and parents just need that, whew, give us like 5 minutes. They used to joke of like, okay, just maybe give her a glass of milk. And it was the joke as I was older and no longer allergic to it that they would be like, oh. But so thankfully I did grow out of that one. But like I was a young child when my allergies were diagnosed. And I know a lot of friends who that is their biggest fear too, of like their kids have allergies, different things like that. So are young ones affected in that way, I guess?
Um, with all the love and compassion in my heart, when clients ask me this, I kind of have to be honest and I respond and
Mm,
I say, your parents love you very much. I know they do. I said, but they probably didn't just pass their brown hair or blue eyes or
oh,
narrow feet to you when you were born.
yep.
So, so just as easily those root causes, even though they're from the external environment and come into the body and can create an issue, those root causes can still be passed on through generations. And I'm finding that's more what tends to be the driver than like actual true genetic
Hmm.
passing down, particularly of food allergies and intolerances. It's not that they can't be, it's that more often I find that it's more like that hereditary, that non-genetic passing down. So your amniotic fluid,
Yeah.
blood, just saliva over the years, common households, like all of those things. So that for me, easily identifies things in younger
Yeah.
children. Also details during the birthing process. So a lot of times, or let me rephrase, I've had cases, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but I've definitely had more than one case where I've had like a younger child around 5 or 7, or even I've had a couple of teens. But when we look back in their medical history with the food clue plus other symptoms that they've had, and then when I ask about the birthing process, there's
All comes
things that have
together.
been, yes, there's things that have popped up like Pitocin when the mom's induced, or like extra like Percocet, things like that. And those can get passed down, those can get like absorbed
Hmm.
in little ways as well. So then along with the regular tenets of my program, there's a little bit of a bias towards like chemical toxicity or detoxing from like chemical medications and things like that.
Hmm.
And that helps them to turn the corner. So in the
And I could
nutshell,
see that. I can
yeah.
see that. I mean, even now, I know studies have come out with the amount of toxins that are just in the umbilical cord at birth,
Mhm.
which is astronomical, right? In that, and then
Mhm.
looking at the amount of medication that kids are on for infections, for like all kinds of things, just routine medications that a lot of doctors recommend their kids, different kids to go on. I could see how that could then affect their different parts of the body, like you said, and then which could then develop into, that reaction almost within the body that could bring
Yeah, I
about
also forgot to
allergies.
mention the other heavy hitter is breast milk. Things can get passed from mother to
Yeah.
child through breast milk as well.
Mhm.
Those healthy nutrients, yes, great, but also infections and toxicity sometimes can be
Mhm.
passed through that as well. So again, yeah, it those can easily be the ways that younger children and even infants can develop those types of food rejections and food reactions.
Yeah, I could see it. And even I'm just thinking back to like some of my toys now where I'm seeing things of like, if you see these toys, remove them from shelves, remove them from your house because they have lead in them, they
Right.
have mercury in them. And I'm like, those were my favorite toys as kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so, and you didn't know back then
No,
what,
you did.
it's so those were just the standard toys that were out there. And yay, lead and mercury. So, I could definitely see, as you were talking, piecing those pieces of the puzzle together, it kind of comes into place. Absolutely. The other part that I was thinking too, when you were talking earlier, now someone who has more severe allergies, and like I said, I always just draw off experience. So I'm just thinking someone like my mom, but I know other people too who like literally everything under the sun they're allergic to. One day they can eat kiwi, the next day they can't. One day they can eat chicken, the next day they can't. And then a week later they can eat chicken again. Different things like that. How's that different versus like myself, where I'm just allergic to, I have two foods I'm allergic to. I've been allergic to them since before I was 7 when I had my allergy tests, and they've just always been there. Like
Mhm.
how does that affect someone as to why they can be allergic to it one day or not allergic to it one day, but then literally the next day they react when they eat
Mhm.
it? I just find that
So
very interesting.
So to answer that question, the biggest difference without the general, the context and the details of an
Yeah.
actual client, the biggest difference between those two is um, on the one side with somebody, like you said, like yourself, that has just isolated but consistent reactions, that usually backs into an underlying consistent dysfunction. So an aspect of liver performance that is just down and out and is consistently not performing and doing its best job, versus the other people that have, or the other example that you gave, when the symptoms are fluctuating, that usually has to do with some type of level or load of something in the body that is fluctuating.
Makes
So when
sense.
it's high in the body, they're more reactive. When it's lower in the body, they're less reactive. And I can tell you the number one load responsive driver of a lot of food allergies or intolerances are acid levels, because a lot of
Hmm.
things in our bodies actually break down, or I shouldn't say break down, but they the the foundation of their like chemical composition are different types of acid combinations. A lot of people are familiar with proteins, like the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. When we talk
Yeah.
about saturated fats or healthy fats and non-healthy fats, a lot of people know that those are fatty acids. That's two different types of acids.
I never thought of that, and that's so interesting.
Oh my gosh. There's more and more research, as I learned, that's already been done. It's not even completely new research. I can have a whole separate conversation on that, but it's not exactly new research, but there are definitely strong correlations between acid levels and how the body manages acids on a daily basis and food allergy intolerance
Yeah.
symptoms, such that, like, in my framework, there's a whole regimen just dedicated to acid elimination, making sure that we're cleaning the body out of excess acids that are stored up, and then improving organ and system performance for better acid management. Like, there's a whole section just for that part. That's how important it is.
Wow.
And that's
And
how much
show
of a
how much that's how many people are affected by it
that's
too, if it
that's how much
needs
of a
that
game
much
changer.
dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That has probably been the single biggest, like I said, it's been the biggest game changer ever. I even did like a whole like separate YouTube, if anybody wants to reach out and get that.
Yeah.
I did a whole separate YouTube video just talking about the links of like acid levels as it relates to food allergies or intolerances, because it's a big deal. And yeah, it's one to
Yeah.
take seriously, and yeah, I keep saying game changer, but it's a game changer. Just
No, it's so fascinating. Honestly, the whole thing is fascinating, and I love how our body systems really are all connected. Everything is connected and we can't separate. And, in your discussion, it's really showing like how much like different things all are intertwined. So yeah, I love that. And I know you've mentioned your book a few times and a few of the processes. So I'd love to know, like, so then obviously you're helping people with all of these allergies. Can you talk a little bit more about your book? I know you talked about a few of the steps that you go through in your book, but if someone wants to learn more about this, help themselves, I'd love to know what they can expect when they do purchase your book.
sure. I it's so funny. The book is another lovely example of that divine intervention. I did not set out to write a book,
Oh, that's awesome.
but there were other plans in the works. Really short story. I was at a business retreat with a colleague slash girlfriend of mine. She was running the retreat, but we were also friends. And it was at a resort, which is a little bit different than a regular restaurant. We sit down, and the first thing the waiter says is, "Does anybody have any allergies?" He wanted to get that out of the way. And she
Mhm.
immediately talked about her carrot allergy. And she says, like, she was like, "I could see the look at your face on your face, and your gears were just going." She was like, "What are you thinking about my carrot?" And so I kind of like broke it down, and I was like, based on how you describe what the allergy is, like, here's what I'm thinking might be going on. And people have been telling me, like, you should write a book about this. And I had no idea what to write. But I wanted it to be something that got information out to the people.
Mhm.
So we went through the weekend and the business retreat. And on the plane ride home, again, I got the intervention, and it was just sprinkled in my little brain. How many other foods can I talk about, and talk about like the food clue, and talk about the
Mhm.
food characteristic and what that means? And by the time the plane landed, I had 35 foods sketched out that I knew, if that food is avoided or you have an allergic
Yeah.
reaction, what it likely means in terms of your body functions. And that's essentially what Food Clues is. So it's not a narrative book, it's not a chapter book. I tell people it's more like a guide and a reference book. So the
Mhm.
first half has 35 common foods that are avoided. They're in alphabetical order.
Nice.
So you can look at all of them at your leisure, but if you know that you have a strawberry allergy, you flip to the strawberry page. If you know
Nice.
you have an avocado allergy, avocado is food number one. And they're numbered. That's how I know that avocado is food number one. Um, so you can flip to the food that you want to know more information about, and it lists the common avoidance or common allergic reactions, why that likely happens, so that root
Mhm.
effect, that dysfunction that it's usually linked to in the body, and then it goes into explaining kind of almost like the root cause or why that can all happen within
Yeah.
the body. So that's the majority of the book. It's just a good reference. It also has a little section that talks about cravings, because cravings
Mm.
can be clues as well. They don't present themselves in the exact same way, and they don't mean the exact same thing, but they are food clues nonetheless. So there's a section on common cravings. And then I go into how like infections and toxicities drive and link all of it together. I talk about my treatment framework and how I guide people's bodies through the transformation process. Um,
Mhm.
and that's basically it. Like I said, it's not necessarily a story, even though I talk about the story I just told about,
Yeah.
how I came up with the book idea. But I really wanted it to be something that somebody could go and pick up and easily get information from to help
Yeah.
explain um, why they're feeling the way they're feeling, or why they're experiencing the way that the things that they're experiencing. I see so much on social media, so many people in like food allergy support groups and things that like their words, but I can almost like feel their desperation of like, why is this happening? Like,
Absolutely.
why am I becoming, allergic to more and more foods? Or like, why is my
Mhm.
baby all of a sudden allergic to all of these things? And this was my way to help and try to offer the answers, to try to
Yeah.
give reasons why, and to let them know that there is a possibility for healing, there is a possibility for resolution. So that's what you can expect in the book. And I've gotten really good feedback about it so far, and so I'm just excited for it to spread more and have more people get
Absolutely.
more information about how the healing and the overcoming of food allergies is really possible without
Yeah.
medication, without prescriptions.
And and as someone who does have to carry an EpiPen, just knowing you don't need an EpiPen, even if it doesn't 100% disappear, just knowing you don't need an EpiPen anymore is that in itself is like life altering, knowing, okay, if I do accidentally eat something, I know I'm not going to have my airways shut completely off within a
Mhm.
few seconds. So to me, I'm just like, and that's what I was able to go from. I still carry an EpiPen with me because again, it's just ingrained in me. I'm too afraid not to have one, but I know I don't need it, so I'm happy with that. But I still want to continue. So I'm very excited to read your book. I am beyond excited to read your book and to dive deep into it to understand it because I've been living with my allergies. I was tested when I was 7 years old because I had already been reacting for a long time. And my child had an allergic reaction, but we realized it was just it wasn't a allergic reaction, but more of a stress reaction because all of a
Mhm.
sudden he was covered in hives and we were like, what is happening? But it was a month of extreme high stress for him when he was 4 years old, where it was moving and new school and all kinds of like everything that could be thrown at him almost was thrown at him. Actually, he was 6. So, but either which way. And so but that was like red bells for me of like, no, please don't take after me with my allergies. Please don't. I'm like, I don't want this for you. Like it's not every parent's nightmare, but it's something that you just don't want to deal with if you don't have to.
Mhm.
To have the kids stress about every time I was the oddball kid that was like, "Oh no, I can't eat that. No, I can't eat that. Oh, what's it made out of?" Like questioning everything when I went to friends' houses. What's that made out of? No, sorry, I can't eat that. And it sucks as a kid. It really, really did.
It
And it
does.
sucks as an adult too, but even more so as a kid of like, yeah, well, yeah, I'm that weird oddball kid that just can't eat what everybody else can eat. So to have this information that parents can have and read through it and support their children, or as an adult, living with this day in and day out, being able to have that information is really life altering. For me, it definitely would be. So I really appreciate that you've put this book together. And I know you were saying in the airplane, it was like sprinkled down on you. To me, I call those downloads. When I get downloads like that, it's like, yes. And then it's just as long as I can remember them. I know a lot of times I would get things like in my dreams or right as I'm waking up, and I'd have to quickly write them down before they
Yeah,
disappear because I'm like,
I am.
no.
Yes, my husband frequently knows if the light of my iPad comes on at 2 o'clock in the morning, something has been downloaded, and I just write down the quick note and then I go back to sleep. But he's
Yeah.
very, very used to it. You you really hit the nail on the head, and it's something that I personally, I don't know if struggle is the right word, but I try not to make it about me too much because I am passionate about helping people. However, the part that I'm going to make it about me for 15 seconds
Absolutely.
is that I just want people to understand, and I really just want people to know from the bottom of my heart, it's not about the food. It's about the food, but it's not about the food. And with
Yes.
what you were just saying, a lot of like people um, before they move forward in the program and working with me, they ask questions like, well, do I have to eat the food that I'm allergic to, or is this just another, thing to get me to eat a certain diet or a certain way? And my answer is no. And I just
Yeah.
want to say like loud and clear, exactly what you said. Like, I've also had people who say, you know, um, they don't want their kid to have that special cupcake when they're at school,
Yeah.
and the other parents bring cupcakes for all the kids for the birthday.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to spend extra time planning when they are going on a trip, and then they can't even go very far in case somebody has a reaction, or they're
Yeah.
sort of missing like holidays with their family because they don't want to burden the whole family with having to go through all the ingredients. I've had, older ladies talk about like dating, like meeting new people, like new relationships, like, being
Yep.
afraid of kissing somebody because they're largely anaphylactic to peanuts and like you just never
Yep.
know. Like those are the things that I want to change for people in the world. Like if you don't want
Yeah.
like it's not, it's about the food, but it's not about the food. And
Yeah.
I think once, hopefully, in addition to what I do offer to help heal the body and create that transformation, I think I just want people to know that it really is so that you can just live more freely and fearlessly. And just, I always say, to enjoy the people, places, and things that you want. And
Yeah,
that includes
absolutely.
food in there, that's great. but I want you to be able to, I want your kids to have friends. I want you to go to Italy because you've always dreamed about it. I want you to be able to get on a plane,
Right.
and things like that. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. That honestly, I
opportunity. I
almost
just wanted people to know that.
I'm having goosebumps because just even you talking like, and it affects the whole family. Just when you're talking
Yeah.
about being able to kiss, because my husband and I are doing this healthy eating regimen right now, where it's just eating whole foods. Realistically, it's just cut out the garbage.
Mhm.
But part of it is in the afternoon. There's a second snack, and it's seed and nuts. And because I can't do tree nuts, at work typically he has them and he'll eat them at work long enough, but he has to time it. So it's not right before he leaves necessarily either. So that when he comes home, it's still not, on him.
Yeah.
And like my kids don't know what seafood is or tree nuts are because we just don't have them in the house. So, and even like my parents growing up, we were huge into fish, like fish fries were constantly something that we ate at home. And it was like all of a sudden, like they couldn't even cook it outside and bring it in because I would wake up the next morning swollen, like a hot air balloon where I'd like be double the size, it seemed. And they didn't even have any of it in the house. So it
Mhm.
was like they were then like, well, one of their favorite foods was just completely eliminated that they couldn't eat anymore, right? Like, and so it really does affect everyone. And, just being able to relieve that stress from people being able, like you said, just being able to enjoy outings, being able to enjoy doing whatever you want and not having that worry
Mhm.
is absolutely like just calming. Like I just get this sense of calming if people could just do that and not have that niggling always, always in the back of your mind. And so absolutely. And now if people wanted to get in touch with you, work with you, find your book, like I said, I'm very excited to read your book. Where can people find your book?
The book is on Amazon. If you just search for FoodClues, it'll pop up.
Yep.
Again, my name is Alexis Sams. So if you type in FoodClues
Yep.
Alexis Sams, and I'm sure there'll be like show notes or something.
Yep. I was going to say, we'll have them in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you get that link, but it's on Amazon.
Perfect. Always the easiest place to order things typically. And if people wanted to connect with you, work with you, and just learn more on what you're doing, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram if you just look up the Food Allergy Doc. That is actually my new Instagram account. You can also find me as Dr. Alexis Sams, but for ease, I'm pretty sure people can remember just like the Food Allergy Doc. The
Yeah.
Food Allergy Doc. I'm also the Food Allergy Doc on Facebook as well. So Facebook,
Awesome.
Instagram. You can also email foodallergydoc@gmail.com. So hands down, just remember the Food Allergy Doc and you can find me.
Perfect. And you're on TikTok also, right?
I am on TikTok as a Food Allergy
Nice.
Doc. I'm new to TikTok, but I am
I
there.
I get that. We were diving into TikTok a little bit, and then honestly, life just got busy and we stopped. But I want to get back into it because they can be fun to make, but it's work.
Yeah.
So I get the dabbling in a little bit into the TikTok world.
Yes, I'm tiptoeing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has honestly been enlightening, amazing. I feel like I could honestly talk to you for hours because this is, as you can tell, a very passionate topic for me. And so thank you very much for coming on the show this week. I'm Nikki Fraser here and with Alexis, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for spending your time with us here at Vetiver Vibes. This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. Don't forget to check out some of our free resources at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think would enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, you can go on over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and we will send you a free guided meditation as our way to say thank you.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply directly to you.